Joined by Jennifer Canary now, and I've been following your story. Introduce who's with you.
This is Mariah, my daughter.
Hello.
Hi.
So this is kind of complicated, but I like trying to make it as simple as possible for people to understand. And I had people watching from Michigan and all across the country, but this is really an issue. This could happen to anyone in the country. I mean, literally, this could happen to anyone at any time, right? I mean,
absolutely. I never dreamed it would happen.
It shouldn't, but it does. Okay, so what was happening? What day? Just kind of give me the lowdown on where it started.
Right. So on November 25th, just this past year, 2023, it was a holiday weekend, Thanksgiving, and it was about 8 a.m. and our dog woke me up to go potty. And so, of course, I leashed him up and took him out to go potty.
Let me show a picture. There's your pup.
Baby boy.
How old at the time? Tell me a little bit about him.
So Rigby was only a year old.
Wow.
Just the sweetest dog you would ever meet.
He only ever knew love. We got him from the side when he was the size of a potato.
Was he? Did I read emotional support animal?
He wasn't registered, but he was very, 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 very attuned to my emotions, and we were planning on it. But he was only one, so
okay. Well,
he very much supported Mariah. She has chronic illnesses, and he was just everything to her. They spent every day together.
We spent every minute of every day together.
Okay, I just wanted to show a picture and let everyone know before. So wakes you up like most dogs do. Mine did that this morning at 4 a.m. to let me go. Wanted to go to the bathroom, and I had to was that the situation you said, or no?
Yes.
But it was 8 a.m, so kind of like a normal time.
Okay.
So we went potty, and we were in my front yard. He was leashed, and we turned around to come up the driveway to come back in the house, and 3 Pitbulls just charged at us. I couldn't make it to the front door. I had walked out, it's 8 a.m. He got me out of bed on a weekend. So I wasn't prepared for a fight. I had slip-on shoes. I was lucky enough to have slipped on a fairly thick winter coat. Didn't even have my phone in my pocket, nothing to defend myself. The 3 large dogs came around. I think they came from between my house and my neighbor's house. They were just out running, and they immediately charged, attacked my dog, and then attacked me. It all happened so fast that, I tried my best to defend us. But ultimately the end result was they injured our dog so badly that the emergency vet couldn't save him.
Was it just you and your daughter was sleeping, or your daughter wasn't out there? Mariah, you weren't out there.
I wasn't out there. No, she was screaming bloody murder, and we have this white noise machine in our house, and I couldn't hear a single thing, and it makes me feel so guilty.
No, that's not your fault. So were you able to make it inside, or because you didn't have a baseball bat or anything? What happened to you? I know, and how did you even escape? Because I've covered stories before where that situation, people have been killed.
She was already on the ground.
Yeah. So
if any of the bite wounds that were on her legs were on her throat, she would be dead.
Oh my.
They were I'm not sure if you're familiar with the dog bite scale, if anyone is, but she sustained multiple level 5 dog bite wounds, which the only thing worse is level 6, which is death.
Jeez. So you're on the ground. Did neighbors come out to help, or how do you get out of that situation? What happened?
Clearly I was screaming, at first I was just I was screaming, stop, no, go home. And then I just started screaming as high pitched as I could, hoping someone would hear. Just over and over and over, to the point where I felt like at one point I was screaming and nothing was left to come out. But they attacked me. They had me down on the ground, jumped on top of me. So I sustained bite wounds to my hand, my left hand, almost required reconstructive surgery. Both legs, up and down, behind my knee, just multiple bite wounds all on my lower torso for the most part.
They were so scared of infection that when she got to the hospital, they used like a special type of, it's basically like a medical high pressure water gun, and they cleaned out her wounds with like saline. And I asked him, I was like, how many times have you had to use this in your career? And he was like, I can count on less than one hand.
Wow.
So,
how did you make it to the hospital? I mean, did I read something that someone did help you, or like did the dogs just go away eventually?
No.
No.
I believe I would not have made it if it weren't for my neighbor across the street. Okay. So eventually they heard screaming.
Realized it wasn't their TV.
Her son was visiting from, it was holiday weekend. Her son was there for the weekend. And so when she realized it wasn't the TV show she had on in the background that she was hearing, that it was actually someone screaming outside, they got in the car with a long, probably like a 6-foot hiking stick. First thing she could find that looked like a weapon. They got in the car and they pulled into the driveway. And at first they started honking and flashing their lights and trying to distract the dogs away. None of that was successful. They tossed the pole out to me because, of course, they were scared to get out of the car as well. There were 3 of them.
Who would it be?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so they tossed me the pole, which I was able to reach for and grab. And I was able to swing it. And I think I struck 2 of the dogs. But the pole broke in half right after that. So I scooped up my dog, who weighed about 30 pounds at the time and was, heavier considering he was in my arms dying. I scooped him up. They said, get in the car. So they were opening one of the back doors for me and for the dog and I to get in the car. While that was happening and I was attempting to get into the car with the dog in my arms, the 3 pit bulls continued to attack me from behind and tried to push into the vehicle.
What
the neighbors just kept screaming, don't let him in, don't let him in.
Like, and they didn't have to do any of this.
No.
They didn't have to help. This was just, there's such good people. They're the only reason my mom is still here.
Literally, if the neighbors would not have been there, you would probably have been going to her funeral.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So you were able to get in the car, close the door at some point?
I did, and then when that happened, the dogs surrounded the car. And, there were conversations in there. People were saying, just hit them if you got to. We got to get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
And we pulled away, and we pulled out onto the street, and they literally started to follow the car.
They chased the car.
Wow, okay.
So when that happened later, after we went to the emergency vet, I was in complete shock. I've never been in shock in my life. Now I know what people talk about when they say they were in shock.
Did you go to the hospital right away?
Nope, because I was more worried about my dog.
Really?
So
that's our baby.
They asked where
I know. Wow. You were bleeding. You were probably bleeding and right? I mean,
she was bleeding everywhere, just profusely bleeding everywhere, just through her pants, like on all of the car interiors,
down my pant legs.
So you went to the emergency vet instead of the hospital for yourself?
I did. So
wow. What I can imagine what they say when you walked in or when you went in there, or whatever, however that went down, they were probably shocked.
We sat in the waiting room with her just dripping blood on the floor for a good amount of time. So
they took the dog back, obviously, and tried to work on him. And my neighbors, bless their hearts, were nice enough to stick around and go out to the car and scrounge up, a bottle of water for me. And I was able to finally reach her by phone, and she made it to the emergency vet, but only in time to be told that he couldn't be saved.
Just time to say goodbye.
Oh, you were able to.
Just in time.
Oh my God.
So
At
then,
some point, go ahead.
so then, obviously I had to be treated. My neighbors were like, "You should have been at the hospital a long time ago.
Yeah.
Let's go." So obviously we proceeded. We went over to Covenant. And I know she kind of told the story about, part of the treatment. I was bleeding so badly that I was sitting in the Covenant lobby. It was coming down my pant legs. And I said, "Oh my gosh."
Bleeding onto the floor. Yeah. In the lobby.
I hope they then took you back right away. That should get you back there really quick, I would hope.
Well, I apparently should have called an ambulance because it didn't get me back right away. It was a very busy day, holiday weekend. The emergency room was full. Obviously we did get back.
So this wasn't some people watching might be, this wasn't just one dog bite. Like you were hurt. You were bad.
There was one by her knee that they had to call in the trauma surgeon for, that they thought that they might have to like put her out to explore and make sure that it wasn't inside the knee joint, like the capsule of the knee joint. And so he numbed her up, and I watched him stick his finger like this far into her leg. So like these are not superficial wounds.
No, that's why I'm shocked they didn't take you back right away. But so were you in the hospital, like admitted to the hospital?
There was several hours where I was there that they debated about admitting me. Mainly because I had a wound on my left hand. There's still a scar there, and if you know what happened, you can tell it's a bite. I don't know how. Probably very hard to see here
on my crappy laptop. Sorry, guys.
But it's kind of a circle of scars there. So that hand was so swollen. They were very fearful that it was already infected, so they were taking precautions there. They thought they might have to admit me and keep me on IV antibiotics,
And they were talking about if it was infected, about how she would have to have plastic surgery and yeah.
So
luckily it was not infected. Luckily.
Okay, so ultimately, they hooked me up to IV antibiotics to jumpstart the treatment. Cleaned everything out, numbed me up, gave me some pain medication, obviously. And then there was the question of, were those dogs that attacked me vaccinated properly?
Yeah, how did they find, the police were called at some point, I would imagine.
Yeah, the police were called as we were proceeding to the emergency vet to report this.
But they didn't make a police report at that point.
Wow. Okay.
It ended up when I called later to get the police report, there wasn't one, and it was just a blurb in their police log that they'd come by the house and didn't see any dogs, and I wasn't here, so they didn't actually do a report.
I was going to say, I'm surprised the neighbors didn't call police, but they were busy trying to save your life, basically.
Correct. Yep. And we did call police, and eventually I do believe that the neighbor's son spoke to somebody in the police department. We actually had to call. I had to call and make up my own police report later to make it official. Now, in the meantime, after we left my driveway, those dogs proceeded to follow the car to the corner, and they made a different turn. They turned left, and I believe we either proceeded straight or turned right. And they went 12 minutes later and attacked a second person who was out walking.
Wow. Okay.
And she didn't have a dog, so it wasn't just the dog that made the dogs aggressive.
So it was just a random person walking down the sidewalk or street, and those dogs. I think I read that in the story or the paperwork. Wow. So how'd that person end up? I mean, how?
They were in the hospital at the same time.
So they had to be treated in the ER as well. And I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to talk with that person. I think just wanted to kind of put it behind them, I would guess.
Trauma.
Yeah.
And but my understanding was her injuries didn't match the extent of mine, and thank God for her for that. But that they just jumped on her, and she was lucky enough to be on a busy enough road where somebody pulled over for her and said, get in the car.
Wow. How were they able eventually, and I'll fast forward, to track down the dogs? How would they know? How'd that come down? How'd they even know who those dogs belonged to?
Well, in our neighborhood, apparently
there's an infamous place.
Well, the dogs they're known, apparently. People know.
In our neighborhood, people know who they belong to because this owner has a substantial history with animal control.
Okay, so it wasn't a secret if people were talking. Neighbors are okay. Yeah, that's the guy that has that kind of. They knew where the dog belonged to.
Yes,
they were telling us where the dogs belong.
Okay, so then the cops eventually, I'm assuming, put two and two together and they questioned that person or found out.
So, I mean, once it was known who the dogs belonged to, who animal control officer, there was Officer Sage, bless her heart, the only person on call for animal control all weekend because of their short-staffed issue.
Oh, yeah.
She tried to make contact with the owner. Eventually, the dogs were rounded up, returned to the owner that the same day of the attack on the 25th. At that point, Officer Sage stayed in contact with us all day. She wrote a report and requested, she kept trying to get a hold of the owner, and he wasn't responding and he wasn't cooperating as far as turning the dogs over to her.
Okay.
So she had to go on that holiday weekend to the court. Judge David Hoffman and prosecutor Van Norman both signed a warrant for search and seizure, and ultimately to euthanize the animals because of the extent of the attacks.
Okay, so the dogs were put down. All three of them are no longer here. That's, I would say, I'm not supposed to give my opinion as a journalist, but that obviously is good news because these are they were dangerous animals.
Clearly.
These dogs, I've seen aggressive dogs. Mariah used to volunteer at a shelter and used to walk all the dogs. And
I used to walk aggressive dogs all the time.
Oh, wow.
The way that she described this is just different. Like, it's just like they were trained to do this.
And that's what I wanted to bring up, because whenever I do stories like this, someone will come after me and saying, I hate pit bulls, or they're accusing me of hating pit bulls. And I'm like,
it's just racism.
Okay, that's what I want to get across. And I want to tell those people who are going to come after me or come after you. It's not about like I used to have a Jack Russell Terrier, and if I would have raised him to be a horrible dog, he could have been a horrible dog.
Right. Any dog has the potential to.
Okay, so you're not holding it against the dogs individually themselves as dogs.
No, because
absolutely not. Okay. No, the owner, the dog is just a reflection of the owner.
Any dog. Yeah.
And that's, our dog was just made of love, and that's why he never saw it coming, and he couldn't defend himself and fight back.
And that's sad in a way for those three dogs that they had to deal with that life of that kind of, whatever.
It is. It's so sad. It devastated me. Like, 4 lives were lost that day. I realized that, because of that incident, not exactly that day, but and I know that the law doesn't recognize animals as life; they recognize them as property. But they're living; they have heartbeats. 4 lives were lost over this.
And a lot of evidence shows that people who do things or do that to animals, they go on themselves to commit crimes. Okay, I don't want to take all your time, but at that point, the dogs were put down, and the individual, the owner of the dog, he was not charged with the crime or arrested at any point?
Correct.
Okay, so he did this day, and I won't name him because he hasn't been charged, he hasn't been arrested. He has not faced no one has faced any charges, correct?
Correct.
Okay, So did the case, it went to the prosecutor, I'm assuming it went to them because they review it, they look it over, and I have a quote I'll put up on the screen, but did anyone tell you at some point, like officially, no, they're not going to charge anyone?
No.
The prosecutor's office would not even speak to us. I made multiple calls during the weeks after, trying to find out where the case was, were they charging him, what was happening. They just kept telling me it's under review. It's under review. We can't give you any information right now. And then about a week or so ago, I got a call from animal control. And they said, we tried our hardest. We gave them every shred of evidence we could. We made a very detailed report, which I saw it all. I know what they presented to the prosecutor, and they have stated that they're not going to press charges at this time.
And animal control actually went through the trouble of resubmitting it, again, and they rejected it again.
Okay, so animal control, they did their best, in your opinion,
Absolutely.
and they're the ones who let you know that there was no charges being filed.
Correct.
Yes.
Their
Okay, and then
recommendation was a dangerous dog felony.
wow. Okay, this was in MLive in the newspaper, and I'm going to read it. This is, I think, the chief assistant prosecutor. It's not because we don't want to issue charges. The way the law is written, when a dog bites someone, we cannot charge the owner criminally unless the dog has been previously declared a dangerous animal, which requires a civil process. I didn't know that. I'm not a lawyer. I'm assuming you saw that quote as well.
We did, and I do have a lawyer.
Okay.
And he's actually been guiding me to go to the media since this happened, and the charges were not submitted. Well, they didn't pick up on charges. So
there are numerous other things that he could be charged with.
Yeah, I think you sent me. Let me bring this up. I know you can't read it, but there's a lot in this document. This is a Michigan law, dangerous animals, it looks like.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it's a lot in here.
And according to, I found this act, and I was doing my own research, and I presented it to my attorney, and he said, yeah, this absolutely meets criteria for prosecution.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of emotion, of course, with what happened to my family and to me, and the fact that these dogs nearly killed me and would have if it wasn't for my neighbors. But when you look at the law, that statement was made by the prosecutor. And then another reporter that I spoke to told me another story about one of the other assistant prosecutors, saying that there was a different reason that they didn't prosecute. So being that the prosecutor's office, even when we went down there in person, won't speak to us, we just don't understand and don't feel that this was reviewed properly by the prosecution.
Okay.
There's Michigan laws and there's Saginaw laws, and they both, according to what I have and what you just presented and what my attorney has said, meet criteria for prosecution. There is some sort of civil thing that people can do to have a dog declared dangerous in Saginaw. However, they don't have to be declared dangerous according to this law for charges to be pressed.
And I have not interviewed the prosecutor. I took that from the media report. So if they want to reach out to me, I'd like to. I don't take anyone's side. I want to just present all the information. I'm not saying they did wrong, you did wrong. Obviously, you didn't do anything wrong. I mean, my God, you were the victim of this situation. So where do we go from here? I mean, you probably had medical bills, right? I mean, I'm assuming, you probably, hopefully you have insurance, but you probably got a lot of bills coming in from all this too.
Yeah, and loss of wages because she couldn't work for a little bit.
Can you sue the owner of the dog? Or if you can't talk about that, that's fine. But
my understanding is that we can.
But good luck getting.
However, sometimes lawsuits aren't collectible, so we don't know what'll happen even if we do.
And it takes years probably for something like that to happen.
Right.
I just want these cases to stop happening. So I feel like this is the perfect case to make an example out of.
I was about to ask you, why do you want him charged? Is it only for yourself? But like you just said, is it an example
for my dog?
Is it to let also other dog owners know that they need to be responsible?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, I see people out walking their little Pomeranians, and I know one of his neighbors has a very small dog as well. She's scared. Lots of our neighbors are scared. The neighborhood wants something done, and I think anyone who has a neighborhood where this has happened in would want something done. We not only incurred medical expenses for both us and then me and then trying to treat our dog, but we're scared to death. We are working on fencing off a very large backyard with 6-foot privacy fence now.
That's an expense.
Everything has been adding up, and the whole thing has been obviously very traumatic and very expensive.
Yeah, that's very expensive. And I just want to say this dog is so darn cute. Rigby?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have another dog, or is it tough to get another, or how's that work? I mean, we had a dog we had just passed away naturally, and I can't imagine this situation. This is horrible.
We don't know what we're going to do. Obviously, we
feel a dog here would be unsafe because
I gotcha.
The charges were not brought.
I gotcha. Does this individual do they have dogs again? Any idea? Or I mean, I don't want to get into his personal life, but
we don't know. After the fact, several weeks after the attack, he went and put up a dog on premises sign in his front window.
So
according
to him, he does.
Now, if I were him, and honestly, I guess I'm not, but he's never apologized, right?
No.
Not that would make it better, but as a human being, I would like, oh my God,
it's even more personal because maybe 5 years ago he was driving around and he was like, oh, my dog got out. Have you seen this big white pit bull? And I was like, no, but I'll help you look. What's its name? And he wouldn't tell me its name. And so me being the animal lover I am, I walk around the whole block and everywhere looking for this dog, and this dog eventually kills my dog.
Wow. So what is I know the Saginaw County prosecutor said that, and you have an attorney. Is there anything, and you're very, brave to be talking to us, to me, the other media. What is your lawyer saying? Is this done with the courts, with the crime part of it, since they said there can be no charges, or are you trying to maybe get them to look at it again, or what's the goal with that?
I mean, we'd love for them to look at it again and
do their job, maybe.
Do their job, look at all the laws involved, and maybe not. I feel like they're taking some laws and maybe possibly misinterpreting them. So I would really like this to be reviewed.
Or can we speak at least? Geez.
To them, you'd like to have what? Just go into there and have a meeting with them, probably.
Yeah, and we called multiple times, and
we went in person and left our information, and still nothing.
No one called. No one has.
Okay, that would be at least to have a discussion and not just do it through the media.
Correct. Yeah, It'd be nice to sit down and look at the laws and have them explain to us why they're not charging.
Why 3 unleashed dogs on our own property causing level 5 bite wounds and death to another dog is not prosecutable. There
was someone, I think, in the Detroit area was just killed. I think it was a man was just killed recently in a similar situation.
And you see it all over. You never think it's going to happen to you. And it's just escalating. You see more and more cases. I'm sure, Dave, you see them more than we do, being in your position. But it's everywhere all the time. These dogs, whether they're strays or not. I read statistically that owned dogs are becoming more responsible for the attacks on people all the time.
before I let you go, because I do have to let you go, what is the main question? I think if anyone's seeing this, like I have hundreds of thousands of people that may see this, if you're a dog owner, you need to be responsible, right? Because, I mean, this guy was a dog owner. These weren't just random, strays walking around that had never had an owner. These were owned by a human being. And many of these situations, they are owned by people. So right. What is it? The people and the law need to hold people accountable. Is that what it is? The message?
The law. Why do we have laws if they're not being enforced?
I mean, there's an ordinance that says you can be charged just for your dog leaving your property. Yet 3 of his dogs came onto my property and tried to kill me and did kill my dog, and there's no charges.
So make it make sense.
So yeah, you're saying basically that there needs to be an example, because if the public sees that, in case A, this person is going to jail or prison or, facing charges, that would make other dog owners think, oh, I better make sure I'm taking care of my animals.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. And if it runs off, they're going to go find it versus letting it come home later. Like,
well, yeah,
because he did say that he did notice that his dogs were missing. He was aware that his dogs were missing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just totally in the mind. Hell, my dog gets out the door, I'm running around the neighborhood in a minute and freaking out because I have a little Pomeranian, so it's not even. It's kind of like that big, but
we used to have one.
Yeah. Okay. Well, getting the word out is at least really good, and like I said, you're brave to do this. And please keep me updated if something changes. If they call you or email, let me know. And at least the least this can do is to put people on alert, and dog owners and everybody just have responsibility. And yeah, I'm hoping you're okay, and just Rigby there, just cute little guy. Yeah, I'm sorry you had to go through this, and hopefully you're healing okay, but just keep me updated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of you.